The intervention. The sky over Australis shimmered with an unnatural crimson, the once pristine atmosphere choked with ash and debris. From orbit, the planet's blue-green continents were now marred by spreading black wounds, the burning cities of the Lumery. Their crystalline spires, once gleaming beacons of their philosophical advancement, crumbled under the relentless bombardment of Meridian warships. The screams of the native Lumery echoed across the crystal valleys of their cities, as the Meridian Dominion marched across their world with plasma cannons and bioengineered war beasts bred only for destruction. In the observation chamber of the Galactic Concordat's monitoring vessel, Ambassador Thelia watched the carnage with mandibles tightly clenched. The towering insectoid's compound eyes reflected the holographic displays showing real-time footage of the invasion. "We must maintain our position," First Observer Joran stated flatly, his gelatinous form pulsing with subdued colors of resignation. "The Concordat's non-interference protocol is absolute. This conflict is classified as an internal frontier dispute." "Internal?" Thelia's translator crackled with indignation. "The Lumery have no military, they're philosophers and artists with rudimentary defensive capabilities." "The Meridians claim historical sovereignty over the Australis system," Joran replied. "Our directive is to document, not intervene." The Galactic Concordat had declared neutrality as always. No one interfered in internal planetary conflicts. It was protocol, it was politics, and it was absolute cowardice. The Lumery were peaceful, technologically behind, spiritually advanced but militarily useless. They stood no chance. The Concordat watched from orbit, silent, observing, recording, but never stepping in because no one was supposed to interfere. Until Earth did. Captain Nikolai Volkov stood on the bridge of the EDF Intrepid, his weathered face illuminated by the tactical display. At 53, he'd seen humanity fight its way from a quarantined backwater to reluctant Concordat membership. Now he was about to throw that fragile diplomatic standing into the vacuum of space. "3 minutes until we exit FTL, Captain," announced Lieutenant Haruki Takahashi, her fingers dancing across the navigation console. "Fleet formation is holding steady." Volkov nodded, his steel-gray eyes never leaving the battle projections. "And the Meridian fleet disposition." Commander Octavia Rivero, his executive officer, enlarged a sector of the tactical map. 23 capital ships, 47 destroyers, and at least 100 fighters. They're not expecting company. 2 standard days after the first Lumery capital was reduced to rubble, the Meridian fleet began receiving strange pings on their long-range radar. Unfamiliar signatures, fast, coordinated, from outside the local system. "Communications ready, sir," reported Communications Officer Zhen Wei. "All channels prepared for broadcast." Volkov took a deep breath. Humanity had withdrawn from the Concordat's military protocols 5 years ago, citing moral bankruptcy and bureaucratic paralysis. They'd maintained trade relations and diplomatic channels, but military autonomy had been non-negotiable. Now they would show why. "All hands to battle stations," Volkov ordered, his voice calm but charged with purpose. "Deploy shields the moment we exit FTL, weapon systems hot but await my command." The Meridians assumed it was Concordat tech, maybe another fleet sent to observe, but the pings kept multiplying, hundreds then thousands. Ships began appearing just outside Australis' orbit, sleek, dark-hulled, bristling with weaponry. No warning, no communications, just presence. Admiral Krenax of the Meridian Dominion was overseeing the orbital bombardment of the Lumery capital when the alerts began blaring. His scaled skin flushed dark blue with agitation as the tactical officer reported the incoming signatures. "Concordat reinforcements," he demanded. "Unknown configuration, Admiral," the tactical officer replied, mandibles clicking nervously. "But the energy signatures, they're Terran." Krenax's inner eyelids flicked in surprise. "Humans? Impossible, they're bound by the same non-interference treaties as the rest." Then the message came, one transmission blasting through every frequency. "This is Captain Nikolai Volkov of the Earth Defense Fleet. Australis is under our protection. Withdraw immediately or you will be fired upon." The Meridians didn't laugh, they didn't mock. They froze because Earth wasn't part of the Concordat military structure anymore. They'd left the Council 5 years ago, citing bureaucracy and moral corruption. Everyone thought they'd gone back to their little blue planet, licking wounds and arguing politics. No one had seen Earth's military in years. They were assumed dormant. But humans never went dormant, they prepared. Captain Volkov's face was a grim mask on every Meridian screen, weathered, gray-eyed, and resolute. Behind him, footage showed rows of Earth's newest battle cruisers, massive ships with cannons designed to punch holes in planetary defenses, not just other ships. Each vessel named for an ancient concept of justice: intrepid, vindication, defiance, liberty. The Meridians hesitated for the first time since conquering the outer systems. They blinked. "Earth has no stake in this world," came Admiral Krenax's reply. "This is a sanctioned territorial reclamation." Volkov didn't even flinch. "That's not how we see it." Then Earth fired the first salvo. The Intrepid's main cannons fired simultaneously with 6 other Earth vessels, vaporizing half the Meridian's front line before they even had shields up. The space around Astralis erupted in blinding light as Earth's fleet executed maneuvers the Meridians had never encountered. No formal battle lines, no predictable attack vectors. Earth's war fleet didn't fight clean. They fought to win, jamming enemy communications, hacking into Meridian AI systems, dropping Black Ops teams directly onto enemy carriers mid-battle. The Meridians hadn't seen tactics like this in centuries because humans didn't fight like the others. They didn't care for glory, they didn't care for honor. They fought dirty, they fought smart, and they fought angry. On the Concordat observation vessel, chaos erupted as the monitors filled with the unexpected battle. Ambassador Thelia watched in shock as Earth ships tore through Meridian defenses with ruthless efficiency. "This is unauthorized intervention," First Observer Joran pulsed with agitated colors. "The humans are violating every principle of the non-interference protocol." "They're protecting a defenseless species from extinction," Thelia countered, her mandibles clicking with barely concealed approval. "They're breaking galactic law," Joran insisted. "They're doing what we should have done," Thelia replied quietly. The Lumeri watched from the ground as strange dark ships screamed through the clouds and lit up the sky like angry gods. Some wept, some prayed, others simply stared, unable to process what they were seeing. Earth, this forgotten backward species from a mid-tier system, was taking on one of the largest dominions in the galaxy. And they were winnings. In orbit, the battle turned from resistance to retreat. Meridian ships tried to jump out, only to be caught in Earth's gravity wells, pulling them back in like prey caught in a hunter's trap. The carnage was surgical, efficient, brutal. Lieutenant Haruki led the first ground team to the surface of Astralis, their dropship weaving through debris fields that were once proud Meridian warships. Her squad secured a landing zone among the ruins of what had been a Lumeri learning center. The air was thick with smoke, the crystalline structures reduced to glittering dust beneath their boots. "Life signs 50 meters northeast," reported Corporal Davids, checking his scanner. "Multiple signatures moving slowly." Haruki nodded, signaling the team forward with practiced hand motions. They moved through the wreckage, weapons ready but lowered. They weren't here as conquerors. They found the Lumeri huddled in the shelter of a partially collapsed archway, 15 adults and several children. The aliens were humanoid but with translucent skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, now dimmed with fear and exhaustion. One stepped forward, taller than the rest, delicate tendrils around their neck pulsing with cautious light patterns. Haruki removed her helmet, showing her face in a universal gesture of trust. "We're from Earth," she said, her translator converting her words to the melodic Lumeri language. "We're here to help." The tall Lumeri studied her with eyes like liquid silver. "Why?" they asked simply. "Why would you risk yourselves for us? The Concordat abandoned us. We are not your people." Down on the surface, Lumeri elders gathered in their shattered temples, trying to understand what was happening, why humans, creatures they barely knew, had come for them. There was no answer, no divine prophecy, no secret alliance, just one stubborn species that couldn't sit still and watch injustice happen. Haruki looked at the destruction around them, then back to the frightened Lumeri. "Because someone had to," she answered. Later that night, as the last Meridian dreadnought burned in orbit, Captain Volkov stood on the bridge of the Intrepid and said quietly, no one was supposed to interfere. He paused, watching as relief ships began their descent toward the wounded planet. But someone had to, and Earth volunteered. The battle for Astralis was over, but the war, the real war, had just begun. On the command deck, Volkov received the first transmission from the Concordat Council. Their message was curt, filled with diplomatic outrage and threats of sanction. Volkov switched off the transmission mid-sentence and opened a channel to Earth Command instead. "Astralis is secure," he reported. "The Meridians have retreated to their home system, casualties minimal. Relief operations underway. He hesitated, then added, "The Concordat is displeased." The response came from General Esparza herself. "Let them be. We didn't join the stars to become part of the problem, Nikolai. The fleet stays until the Lumeri are safe." As the transmission ended, Lieutenant Haruki's voice came through from the surface. "Captain, you need to see this. The Lumeri, they're calling us guardians." Volkov gazed out at the wounded planet below, where his people were already setting up medical stations and distributing supplies. "Not guardians," he corrected softly. "Just humans who remembered what it means to be human." On the horizon of Astralis, for the first time in weeks, the sun began to rise, the reckoning. The days that followed were silent but not peaceful. The battlefield that once circled Astralis had turned into a graveyard of meridian wreckage, floating husks drifting in cold orbit. Earth's war fleet held position, dozens of ships like shadows across the stars. They didn't speak, they didn't negotiate, they only secured what they had defended. Inside the crystal cities of the Lumeri, survivors emerged from underground shelters. Buildings were gone, temples turned to ash, families shattered. Yet when they looked skyward, they saw something they'd never expected: protection. Not gods, not saviors, but something strangely more comforting: humans. Lieutenant Haruki Takahashi stood atop a ridge overlooking what remained of Nelari, the cultural heart of Lumeri civilization. Engineers in Earth Defense Force uniforms moved purposefully through the ruins, setting up water purifiers, medical stations, and communication relays. The EDF hadn't just stopped the slaughter, they'd committed to the aftermath. "Your people build with remarkable speed," observed a soft voice behind her. Haruki turned to see Nilith, the Lumeri elder who had first greeted her landing party. The alien's translucent skin pulsed with patterns of curious blue light. "We've had practice," Haruki replied, her expression somber. "Too much practice." Nilith's slender fingers traced patterns in the air, a Lumeri gesture of contemplation. "The histories speak of humans as isolated, volatile. The Concordat described your kind as unpredictable, dangerous. Why would such beings sacrifice for strangers?" Haruki watched as a group of children, human soldiers, and Lumeri younglings worked together to clear debris from what had once been a gathering place. "Because we know what it means to be alone in the universe," she said finally. "We remember how it feels when no one comes." Thousands of light-years away, beyond the shimmering nebula that marked the border of Meridian space, High Marshal Drevak stood before the War Council, his massive frame tense with barely controlled fury. The chamber's walls displayed holographic wreckage, the remains of their once-proud invasion fleet. "This humiliation cannot stand," he growled, sharp teeth gleaming in the dim light. "The humans have violated every principle of the non-interference protocol. They've destroyed Meridian ships, killed Meridian soldiers, and halted a sanctioned military operation." General Vihask, her scaled skin bearing the ceremonial scars of 100 campaigns, studied the tactical readouts with narrowed eyes. "They fight unlike any species we've encountered. No formation, no predictable patterns. Our casualties were unprecedented." "They're animals," Drevak spat. "Clever ones, but animals nonetheless, and they've made a critical error." His clawed hand activated a new holographic display, revealing a massive cylindrical structure housed within an asteroid field. "The humans think they've won because they defeated our conventional forces. They have no idea what we've been developing." The device rotated slowly in the holographic projection. Not a warship, but a weapon, vast and terrible, its core pulsing with contained energy. "The Void Spear," Drevak announced with grim satisfaction. "Designed to penetrate planetary shields and destabilize a world's core. The Concordat believes we abandoned this research. They were wrong." Vihask's expression hardened. "You propose using it on Astralis. With humans present, the Concordat may tolerate frontier conflicts but planet killers." "The Concordat will observe," Drevak interrupted, "as they always do. By the time they debate intervention, Astralis will be molten rock and Earth will learn the price of interference." In the shining halls of the Galactic Concordat, chaos reigned behind velvet diplomacy. Delegates shouted across chambers words like illegal, unilateral, and provocative hurled like weapons. But beneath the polished outrage was fear. Fear that Earth had not only violated interstellar law but exposed how hollow it really was. Ambassador Thelia stood before the General Assembly, her tall form rigid with conviction. "The humans acted because we failed to act. Their intervention was illegal by our statutes but necessary by any moral standard. The Lumeri would be extinct without them." First observer Joran pulsed with agitated colors. This is precisely why the non-interference protocol exists. Once we start choosing sides in planetary conflicts, where does it end? Will Earth next decide to liberate Concordat members they deem oppressive? Will they appoint themselves the galaxy's conscience? Perhaps, Thelia replied, her mandibles clicking softly. We need a conscience. The chamber erupted into chaos, but beyond those gilded walls, something unexpected was happening. Across fringe colonies, trade hubs, and even within Concordat territories, the reaction to Earth's intervention wasn't outrage, it was inspiration. The footage of Earth's fleet obliterating the Meridian aggressors wasn't just news, it became legend. People whispered about humanity, not as primitives, but as warriors, protectors, avenging forces in steel ships. Even races who once mocked Earth's chaotic politics now replayed Captain Volkov's defiant speech with growing admiration. On the frontier station of Nexus Prime, Jorvental, a veteran cargo pilot and refugee from 3 different non-intervention zones, watched the broadcast with tears in his eyes. Finally, he whispered to his drinking companions, someone remembered what it means to stand up. Back on Astralis, Captain Volkov was meeting with his senior staff aboard the Intrepid. The Concordat has formally censured Earth, he announced, his weathered face impassive. They're threatening trade sanctions, diplomatic isolation, the usual. Commander Octavia Rivero snorted, as if we haven't been preparing for that contingency for years. What concerns me, Lieutenant Commander Zhen Wei interjected, examining sensor logs, is this unusual activity we're detecting near the Meridian home system. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database. They're building something. Volkov studied the readings, his experienced eyes narrowing. They're not done with Astralis. Increase our orbital defense grid. I want double shifts on sensor arrays. Whatever the Meridians are planning, they won't catch us unprepared. Down on the planet's surface, Lieutenant Haruki had begun training a small group of Lumari volunteers in basic defense procedures. Not to create soldiers. The Lumari physiology was ill-suited for combat, but to establish an early warning system, evacuation protocols, and emergency response teams. Nilith watched these exercises with mixed feelings, her luminescent patterns shifting between hopeful green and mournful blue. Before the Meridians came, we had no word for evacuation drill in our language, she observed. Now your military terms become part of our children's vocabulary. Haruki paused, looking at the young Lumari practicing emergency signals. I wish we could have met differently, she said quietly. Perhaps, Nilith replied, her silver eyes reflecting the afternoon sun, we would never have met at all without this conflict. The universe rarely arranges gentle introductions. The warning came 3 standard weeks after Earth's intervention. The Intrepid's long-range sensors detected an anomaly, a massive object moving at sublight speed toward the Astralis system, escorted by what remained of the Meridian fleet. On the bridge, Commander Rivero enlarged the sensor image. What are we looking at exactly? Lieutenant Wei's normally composed features showed rare concern. Energy readings suggest a focused gravitational weapon. If I'm interpreting this correctly, it's designed to, he hesitated, destabilize planetary cores. Silence fell across the bridge as the implications became clear. Evacuation options, Volkov asked, his voice steady despite the horror of what they faced. Impossible on this timeline, Rivero answered grimly. We could get maybe 2% of the Lumari population off-world before that thing arrives. And where would we take them? The Concordat won't accept refugees from a conflict they've deemed internal. Volkov stood facing the tactical display where the weapon's approach was tracked in cold, unfeeling digits. Then we stand and fight. Alert all ships. Recall all ground personnel except medical teams. And get me a direct channel to the Concordat Council. Sir Wei cautioned, the Concordat has explicitly ordered no further. I don't intend to ask permission, Lieutenant, Volkov interrupted. I intend to make them watch. When the transmission opened to the Concordat Council, Volkov didn't wait for formal acknowledgements. A Meridian planet killer is en route to Astralis. This is a Class 1 violation of the Weapons Limitation Treaty that even the Concordat claims to uphold. Earth forces will engage to prevent planetary genocide. We are live-streaming this transmission to every inhabited world in Concordat space. Your response, or lack thereof, will be witnessed by trillions. He cut the connection before they could reply. Sometimes humanity's most effective weapon wasn't its technology, but its willingness to drag secrets into the light. As the Void Spear entered the outer reaches of the Astralis system, Earth's war fleet moved into position. Not in retreat, not in diplomatic posturing, but in a protective formation, a human shield between death and those they'd chosen to defend. On every ship, crews prepared for what most believed would be their final stand. They weren't facing a fleet this time, but a doomsday weapon designed by an empire willing to destroy an entire world rather than accept defeat. On the Intrepid's bridge, Volkov opened a fleet-wide channel. This is not our world. These are not our people. But today, they are under our protection. The Meridians believe we will retreat in the face of their ultimate weapon. They believe no one would die for strangers. They don't understand humans very well. Across the fleet, soldiers and sailors listened, their faces set with the grim determination that had become humanity's hallmark among the stars. Earth has been alone before, Volkov continued. We've faced extinction before. It taught us something the Concordat forgot, and the Dominion never knew, that the measure of civilization isn't its ability to win conflicts but its refusal to abandon the defenseless. Hold the line. For Earth, for Astralis, for the promise that no one faces darkness alone. As the Void Spear approached weapons range, surrounded by the remaining Meridian warships, something unexpected appeared on Earth's sensors, ships, dozens of them, then hundreds, emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. Not Concordat vessels with their gleaming insignia, but a motley collection of freighters, converted mining vessels, outdated cruisers, and civilian ships retrofitted with makeshift armor and weapons. Captain, Lieutenant Wei reported, his voice incredulous, "We're receiving transmissions from the incoming vessels. There, volunteers from all over the sector. Independent worlds, former Concordat colonies, even some bearing Meridian registry with overwritten transponders." The first transmission came through, crackling with the static of hastily modified communication systems. "This is Captain Jorven Tal of the independent vessel Hope's Vanguard. We saw what you did for the Lumery. We're here to stand with Earth. Just tell us where you need us." More transmissions followed, ship captains, colony representatives, even defecting Concordat officials, all responding to the same impulse that had brought humanity to Astralis in the first place. Someone had to stand against the darkness. On the bridge of the Intrepid, for the first time since the crisis began, Captain Volkov smiled. "Coordinate with all incoming vessels," he ordered. "Defensive positions according to capability, and someone get me a direct line to High Marshal Drevak." When the Meridian commander's face appeared on screen, his expression of confident triumph faltered at the sight of Volkov's unexpected smile. "High Marshal," Volkov greeted him with dangerous courtesy, "I thought you should know your demonstration of force has indeed sent a message to the galaxy, just not the one you intended. Look around you. This is no longer Earth standing alone. This is the beginning of something you can't destroy with any weapon, no matter how powerful." Drevak's eyes widened as his tactical displays updated, showing the swarm of vessels joining Earth's formation, hundreds of ships from dozens of worlds, creating a barrier between the Void Spear and Astralis. "This changes nothing," the Meridian snarled. "You've simply brought more witnesses to your destruction." "Perhaps," Volkov conceded, "or perhaps we've brought something the galaxy hasn't seen in centuries, a line in the darkness drawn by those who remember what it means to stand together." He leaned forward. "The choice is yours, Marshal. Fire your weapon against this fleet and write your place in history as the butcher who rallied the galaxy against you, or retreat and live to see what comes next." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Drevak's reptilian eyes. On distant Concordat worlds, populations watched breathlessly as the standoff unfolded, not just Earth's military might, but a spontaneous coalition of the previously voiceless, the passed over, the abandoned. Something new was taking shape, something the careful politics of non-interference had never predicted. Solidarity that transcended species. As the Void Spear reached optimal firing position, a new signal cut through all communications, the Concordat Council breaking their silence at last. Not with empty diplomatic phrases but with action. Concordat enforcement vessels dropped out of hyperspace, positioning themselves not with Earth's makeshift coalition, but directly facing the Meridian fleet. "By emergency vote of the Council," announced First Observer Joran, his gelatinous form now pulsing with decisive colors, "the Meridian Dominion is hereby condemned for development of prohibited weapons technologies. The Void Spear will be impounded and all Meridian forces will withdraw immediately from Astralis space." The Meridian fleet hesitated, suddenly faced not just with Earth and its ragtag allies, but with the full legal authority of the Concordat, the very entity whose rules they had exploited for so long. In the tense moments that followed, High Marshal Drevak made his calculation. With deliberate slowness, the Meridian vessels began powering down weapon systems. The Void Spear, the planet killer that had come so close to ending millions of lives, went dormant under the watchful eyes of a galaxy that had finally awakened. Ambassador Thelia, standing on the bridge of the lead Concordat vessel, opened a private channel to Captain Volkov. This change in policy, she admitted, her mandibles clicking softly, was not unanimous, but it was necessary. Earth reminded us of something we had forgotten. And what was that? Volkov asked. That observation without action is merely witnessed evil, she replied. The Concordat will be different after today. As the immediate danger passed and the combined fleet maintained its protective formation around Astralis, Lieutenant Haruki stood with Nilith at the highest point of the restored Lumeri capital. The sky above them was filled with distant lights, hundreds of ships from across the galaxy, come not to conquer, not to exploit, but to stand with strangers against extinction. Your Captain Volkov said something when he first arrived, Nilith remarked, her luminescent patterns pulsing with thoughtful blue. He said no one was supposed to interfere, but someone had to. I've been considering these words. They contain both lament and resolve, regret and determination. Haruki nodded, watching as relief ships from a dozen worlds began their descent to the planet's surface. That's humanity in a nutshell, she said with a small smile. We're complicated that way. Perhaps, Nilith suggested, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. The galaxy needs more complication. On the bridge of the Intrepid, Captain Volkov received the latest reports from across Astralis, reconstruction accelerating, medical supplies flowing in from previously neutral worlds, even Concordat scientists arriving to assist with environmental restoration. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was the beginning of something just as important: change. Commander Rivero joined him at the viewport, watching as the improvised coalition of ships maintained their protective formation. Orders from Earth Command, sir. We're to establish a permanent presence here, the first Earth defense outpost beyond our solar system. And the Concordat? Volkov asked. They're calling it a joint peacekeeping initiative, Rivero replied with a hint of amusement. Apparently we're all on the same side now. Volkov allowed himself a brief, tired smile. Not quite the same side, but facing the same direction at least. As night fell across Astralis, the new lights in the sky weren't invaders or distant observers, but protectors. A constellation of vessels from 100 worlds, united not by treaties or protocols, but by the simple, revolutionary idea that had brought humanity across the stars in the first place, that no one should face darkness alone. On Earth, news of the Astralis coalition spread like wildfire. What had begun as a military intervention had transformed into something unprecedented. The first true interspecies alliance founded not on commerce or convenience, but on principle. Captain Nikolai Volkov stood on the bridge of the Intrepid, watching as Astralis turned slowly beneath a new dawn, its wounds healing under the care of a galaxy that had finally remembered how to care. They said humans would stay out of it, he murmured to himself, remembering the Concordat's warnings, the diplomatic threats, the certainty that Earth would never risk everything for strangers. They had been wrong, and the stars would never be the same.